Hello and welcome. We're going to get a little situated here. I see Greg made it in. So I've sent Greg and Pro-Life Caucus invites to co-host. Jessica, I'm adding as a speaker. Looks like we are recording, so that is set. I will, let's see. Looks like, Greg, hopefully you can accept the co-host invite. And Albert, I think, let's see. You have the invite also, Albert, to co-host. Jessica, I see you got your speaker invite. That's great. Welcome, Michael and Russell. Sorry, we're just going to be a couple minutes because we need to get situated. All right, we got Pro-Life as co-host. Then hopefully we can get Greg up here as well. Thank you guys for coming. This is going to be part one of a series. We have the Christian Caucus, the Pro-Life Libertarian Caucus, and also the Center for Natural Law. We've teamed up to kind of go through a vetting process of our own with the presidential nominee hopefuls for the Libertarian Party. Our hope is to find out their positions on the things that are important to us and people involved in our respective groups. We do have some overlap in our values and things that we find important, so it kind of works out that we came together to do this. So today we have scheduled Dr. Rectenwald. We will be interviewing him. We'll talk a little bit about each of our groups, what our purposes are, so you can know a little bit about us. Then we'll give Dr. Rectenwald some time to introduce himself and a little bit about, his campaign, why he chose to run, and why he thinks he'd be the best choice. Then after that, we will be asking him questions. We'll, take turns between the Christian Caucus, Pro-Life Libertarian Caucus, and Greg is representing. If we can get past a couple technical difficulties, I think can get him up here, then he will also be asking a couple questions. So we've decided for the format of this, instead of bringing up additional speakers, what we are going to have people do if they want to ask questions is go ahead and just comment it on this space. If you are looking at the space on the bottom right, there's a little like speaker bubble looking thing next to the heart and stuff. And if you click on that, you can write a comment on the space. And then what happens with that is we can go through those, and Jessica's going to be watching those, and we'll be using some of those as questions also to ask. And we can throw those up kind of in the whatever you call the stage or the jumbotron, what have you, to so everyone can see it. So I guess we could start. Albert, is there anything you want to say before did I kind of cover it? You are muted, by the way. He may be doing something else. Well.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I
awesome.
unmuted myself. Yeah. Do you see Dr. Rectenwald on the list? Is he there?
No, don't see him right now on there. Maybe we could send him the space in a instant message.
Okay. Can you do that on your end?
Yeah, I could do that. I could I don't know if I'm connected to him though, if it'll go through. Let's see. I don't think it's gonna let me because we don't see. I think you have to be like mutuals on here to be able to do so. Let me see if I can just tag him in this space. I will tag him and hopefully he'll see that.
Okay. Yeah, I just sent him an email as well. So hopefully he gets one of those things.
Okay. We could maybe just go ahead and do the next part of what we were going to do and talk about our respective groups and what we're about.
Sure. Sounds good. So do you want to begin?
Yeah, I could go real quick and then you go next. That's fine.
Okay.
So we're the Christian caucus of the Libertarian Party. And basically, we just want to do work where Christianity and libertarianism intersect, which is a lot. We basically want to influence the party with Christianity. And we also want to bring libertarian political philosophy to Christians because we think that they go hand in hand. And so a lot of our work is based in that. So we promote voluntarism. We try to lobby against things that violate our values and beliefs. Yeah, but if anybody wants to join us, this is our Twitter handle right here. And then we have a Discord. If you're interested in joining that, you can send us a DM or comment and we can get you a link to that. Right now, we have this series going on with Pro-Life Caucus and Center for Natural Law. And another thing we're working on is organizing some people for doing this lobbying attempt to push the defund Planned Parenthood bill through a committee where it's been stuck. So that's kind of what we have majorly going on right now. That's about it for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Albert Veldhuizen, and I'm the secretary of the Pro-Life Libertarian Caucus. Our caucus was formed shortly before the 2020 National Libertarian Party convention. And before 2020, I think pro-lifers were pretty disorganized within the Libertarian Party. And the focus of many pro-lifers had been to abolish the abortion plank. And that had been a perennial battle for many conventions. But that effort had always ended up in failure. So in 2020, our chairman, Russell Brooksbank, who formed the caucus shortly before that convention, he moved to have the plank abolished at that convention. And we received at that point the highest mark for deletion, which was around 45%. And then in 2022, he also moved to do that. And then in 2022, that's when we finally were successful. And as a result of our organizational efforts and convincing delegates, and also aligning with other caucuses in that effort, we're finally able to abolish the abortion plank, which was overwhelmingly defeated by about 65% of the delegates. So basically, the caucus's goal is to solidify the trend of the Libertarian Party in a more pro-life direction. And what our preamble states is that the Libertarian Party stands for the protection of the rights of the smallest minority, the individual. We cannot think of an individual that needs more protection than a preborn person. And we believe that a pro-life stance is the correct stance for the Libertarian Party. So we strive to move the culture of the Libertarian Party towards that stance by supporting candidates for party leadership, nominees to public office, changes to our party platform, and education of fellow members. So I have been attending various conventions. This past year, the South Carolina convention, we set up a table there. We're going to set up a table at the Florida convention next weekend, and at the Virginia convention in March, and definitely at the national convention in May. And so just want to raise awareness of the pro-life issue within the Libertarian Party and to work within the structures of the party to ensure that the abortion plank never comes back. And so we were able to get 3 of our members as part of the platform committee. And so that's part of our effort and strategy to keep the Libertarian Party at least not pro-abortion, but rather moving in a more pro-life direction. So that's, in a nutshell, what we're about.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know. I see Jennifer here. I don't know if she would know of a way to kind of get in touch with him because Jennifer, we had scheduled Dr. Rectenwald this afternoon slash evening. Um, do you have a way to get in touch with him maybe? Could you give me like a little emoji maybe? Oh wait, let's see. She is requested. Hello.
Hey, yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sure can.
Okay, yeah, I heard that his flight was delayed and his assistant Lori said she's gonna be reaching out to you to figure out a plan. I think so, yeah. So I'm not sure. So anyway, just wanted to I could, just that's what I just heard.
Oh, that's helpful. Thanks. Because we
Yeah.
weren't sure what was going on. But that makes sense if he's traveling because I know that the weather is crazy right now, everywhere except here and probably in Florida. So that's too bad. I hope, okay, well, then I guess she'll let us know if he's able to join us or if we're going to need to reschedule with him.
Yeah,
Okay.
she said she was working on it. He mentioned he might be able to join. I think in like 20 minutes, but I don't know if that's a for sure thing or not. Or they might. So
Okay. All right. Well, Albert, what do you think we should do?
Uh, well, good question. I don't know. I mean, I think we could, potentially wait a few minutes and maybe ask if anybody has any questions about our groups. And at that point, maybe if he doesn't show up, then we'll just have to reschedule. But I mean, yeah, so that's my inclination at first. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. Sure. We could start with that. Does anybody, if anybody wants to come up and ask a question about our groups or anything, go ahead and raise your hand or request to speak and we can pull you up. And let's see. Well, don't all at once now. I don't know. I'm trying to think of anything else that I could share right now. I guess I could say a little bit more about our caucus. We're kind of rather new. Um, One thing that I think is important is that Christians know that they have a home in the Libertarian Party. I think what Albert and the Pro-Life Caucus are doing is very important because that is definitely one of the very tangible, like things that like Christians point to when I talk to them about the Libertarian Party is they just assume that everybody's pro, choice, pro abortion, whatever you would say. And getting that out of our platform has been a great thing for me to be able to point to let people know that we do have pro-life people in the party and we are trying to influence the party in that direction. Also, I for a long time didn't think that Christians really had a place in the Libertarian Party. It seemed more like a place for like do as you will, do as you want, like whatever it is, just as long as it doesn't hurt me. And I listened to people like Dave Smith and people that supported things like more of a conservative lifestyle and values and voluntarism. And I realized there's this whole other side to libertarianism that I didn't really understand before. I thought it was more just go be crazy as long as you don't hurt me. So I'm really glad to have found a home in the Libertarian Party, and I hope to show other Christians that they do have a place here, that this is the most logical political place to be, that for as Christians, we want to influence people with a voluntary lens. We don't want to like force people through laws. One of the major reasons is because if someone, as soon as someone else gets that power, they would impose their will on us, and we wouldn't want that. So that's just a little bit more rambling about where we're coming from. Albert, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I guess I could talk a little bit about my libertarian development. I guess before 2016, I was a pretty solid Republican, but then I think the catalyst for me to see the libertarian light was first the nomination of Donald Trump for the Republican Party, and also the fact that solid liberty-minded individuals, because I was more of a liberty-oriented Republican. And I understood even back when I was really young, the value of limited government, of small government. And I thought that that was always where the Republican Party was, at least rhetorically, that's where they were focused. But the election of Donald Trump kind of opened my eyes, because that was no longer really the governing philosophy of the Republican Party. And that had happened gradually over time. But the other issue, too, that was a stumbling block for me to join the Libertarian Party was precisely the abortion issue. Because the Libertarian Party, from the very beginning, had basically a pro-abortion position. But then, I kind of got to thinking, there are totalitarian states in the past, like Hitler's Germany and other places, that had a very, you could say, pro-life policy, right? But that in itself cannot be the end all. So you cannot have a government that's all controlling, all inclusive, totalitarian, and have a pro-abortion or pro-life position. I mean, it has to be kind of a seamless ethic where you have liberty on all ends, including for the preborn individual, because the smallest individual is also entitled to liberty. So I started really thinking about these issues, and I saw that really there could be the Libertarian Party, just because of its philosophy and because of its background and the people who were associated with it, like Ron Paul, kind of got me thinking, this is really my natural home. So then I started becoming involved and kind of curious about getting involved. And so I signed up for my first national convention in 2020. But the one thing that I really wanted to focus on was the pro-life issue, because of the fact that even though I'm interested in all kinds of other issues from a liberty perspective, but the pro-life issue is where I felt that there's a real chink in the Libertarian Party, that's an issue that they really need to be consistent on, and to properly apply the non-aggression principle. So that's what I want to focus on. And then, through my involvement, I got to know Russell and a bunch of other people, and realized that, in fact, I had a lot of people who saw it like I did, that the pro-life issue was an important issue, and that the pro-lifers' natural home should be the Libertarian Party. So anyway, that's kind of a long-winded response, but I just wanted to throw that out. Anything?
Russell requested to speak, so maybe he had something he wanted to
Yes.
say if you were kind of wrapping
Yes.
up?
That sounds great.
Go ahead.
Hello. First, I want to say thank you to the Christian Caucus and the Center for Natural Law for joining with us to host this. And you all are doing a great job putting it together. I'm glad I let Al handle things, and so I can sit back and listen. And but I did have a question, and I posed it in the comment section. Um, I wholeheartedly believe that God's a libertarian, and so how do you go about explaining that to your fellow Christians?
Well, I can give you my thoughts, and then I'm sure if someone like Jessica wants to also jump in, she can, or anybody else. But for me, one of the biggest things that points to that for me is that we have a voluntary relationship with God. He doesn't force us to accept Jesus. This is a decision that we make on our own, and we are free in Christ. We're free to choose Him or reject Him and the consequences are what they are either way. So I just see that this is the format he's set up his own relationship with us. So it makes sense that, that is how things are supposed to be. And then in addition to that, we have a king in Christ. A lot of times, like Jacob, who hosts the Biblical Anarchy podcast and is one of our co-founders, he points out, I can't remember if it was Second Samuel or First Samuel, and I believe chapter 8, when he talks about when the Jewish people were asking for a king, and they were told like that is it's going to be terrible and tyranny, but they were just fearful and they wanted that security blanket of having an earthly king. And that's not what God wanted for them. We have a king already. So that's my initial thoughts for that question. That's a great question, Russell. Does anybody else would like to respond to that?
Yeah, I'd like to put in my 2 cents on that. I think that Russell is right on that, God is a libertarian, and I see that throughout Scripture, because in the Old Testament, and you alluded to that in Samuel, the people wanted a king, and God basically told them that the people were choosing was tyranny, because He was going to take more than 10% of their income, and He's going to take their sons and wives and their resources. And so if you look at that, then the 10%, more than 10% is God considered tyranny. So to me, that's an indication that you have a blueprint for limited government in the Old Testament. And if you look at also some of the other stories in the Bible, for example, Ahab, the king, and in order to get his neighbor's property, he was forced to engage in a deception, to basically get two people to be false witnesses against this person's property, to be able to take his property. Under current eminent domain principles, states just take people's property away, and so that pretense isn't even necessary today. So I think you can see elements in the Old Testament, even under the kings, where you had certain rights that were guaranteed. And also in the New Testament, where Paul talks in Romans about rulers, and he says rulers are fear to do evil, and that the ruler's purpose is to punish evil and to reward what is good. The ruler doesn't have unlimited authority, to do evil, to do whatever the ruler wants, but rather is bound by God's ethical standards in Scripture. So there's unlike in the Middle Ages where you had the divine right of kings, that's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches that kings are limited. And in fact, the reformers, that was one of the main objections of the Protestant Reformation, where you had people like Samuel Rutherford, who wrote a book called Lex Rex, The Law is King, and the king is not king, but the law should be king, and referring to basically the law of God. So just as we should be limited by the laws of God, the kings need to be limited too. And that was one of the great things about the United States, especially when you looked at the time of the Nixon presidency and before. People were marveling about, well, even the president can't be above the law. Well, we've gone a far cry from there, where today it seems like we might have two standards of justice. So yeah, I mean, any comments on that?
Oh, yeah. So I just wanted to say I just heard from Dr. Rectenwald, and he is going to be joining in a couple of minutes.
Oh, great.
So yeah, sorry about that, just the flight issues. So he's almost at the gate, and then he'll be able to join.
Okay.
That's really awesome that he's gonna try to squeeze us in, even with all of that chaos. So we're thankful for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
told
thank you,
him that was
Jennifer,
a
for
good
being able to communicate that with us. We are appreciative of that very much.
Yeah, and I told him it was a good conversation so far about God and being a libertarian and stuff. So that's interesting to think about. And yeah, I just wanted to echo what you said at the beginning of just how I'm glad that there is this caucus, the Christian caucus that's been set up, because I felt the same way, that I didn't really feel like there was like a great home for Christians in the Libertarian Party. And so it was exciting to see that set up. And yeah, so just appreciative of that.
Yeah, that's great. Are you Christian yourself, Jennifer?
Yeah, I am Lutheran.
Okay, nice. Well,
Yeah.
you should join us over in the Discord.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that'd be great.
we actually, just so you guys know, some people here are already in our Discord, but we don't have any like barriers to entry on our Discord. We just, I mean, if you come there, like we're doing the work we're doing that lines up with our values and vision. So as much as you, even if you're not a Christian or not a libertarian, as much as you want to do those things, you're welcome to come join us in the things that you do agree with us on. Other than that, we are, we definitely want all Christian libertarians for sure. And then beyond that, anybody who wants to do work with us that's in that realm. Because I'm sure we have overlap with people that even aren't, Christian or aren't libertarian on the left and right and other. So yeah, just if anybody is interested in that, you can DM me and I'll get you an invite. And so you can get involved with the Christian libertarians. See, I see the mayor down there. Hi, Mayor Aaron. It's whenever I see him, I like to point out that he's like a celebrity because we don't have a ton of elected people as libertarians, but he is one of them. So it is great to be in his presence. Hello. And I forget where exactly, but I know it's in Colorado. All right. Well, I don't really know what else we should talk about right now. Albert, you're doing such a great job. Why don't you take the helm? I was more like in the gears of asking questions today, so I'm kind of like, oh gosh, beyond that, I'm kind of at a loss.
Yeah, I guess
Yes. Oh,
I think we lost him.
yeah. I somehow it showed that he declined his co-host and then he went down to listener. While he's coming back up, I guess I could just say a little bit more about the Planned Parenthood thing. So about a year ago, on it was like January 9th, there was a bill introduced to defund Planned Parenthood, or more accurately, it was to put a moratorium on federal spending on Planned Parenthood and anywhere else that performs abortion. When and another thing for Planned Parenthood as a side note that we really don't like in our caucus is they're now supplying hormones and stuff for transitioning minors, for the gender ideology stuff, and we're against that, and we're against the abortions, obviously. So to hit it from an angle where libertarians can all agree is we want to defund them, because even if you are pro-choice, if you're very a principled libertarian, I would assume you don't think that we should all have to pay for it. So if anybody wants to help out with that, this is a bill we're trying to push through. So it was introduced last year around January 9th. And then I'd have to check the exact date, but I believe it's January 20th or 23rd. It was moved into committee and it has been there ever since. So our plan is to flood that committee with calls around the 1 year mark. We have set up a little Telegram channel and we're kind of copying the Defend the Guard efforts with that, where we can just communicate on the day that we're going to be flooding the committee with calls. We'll have a little script pinned in there, as well as the members of that committee and all the contact information. And we can just keep each other updated on what happens when we call each of those Congress members. So that's something like, that's the type of work that we are kind of about and want to do. I'm not like the most well-read libertarian and, philosophically, entrenched in the literature, and I'm not the best Christian that knows all of the theology and, but I'm just like this caucus is like just like a call to obedience for me to just do work for God in this area. So it's kind of like we're trying to be practical. We're trying to do things that are going to affect things politically and the party and in our local communities. Um, so yeah, that's so this project is one of our first projects and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, this is Albert. I'm back online. I don't know what happened. Somehow I must have hit the wrong button or something. So I got off for a little while. But can you hear me there?
Yeah,
Okay,
you're
great.
live.
Okay. So I guess we're still waiting for Dr. Rectenwald. I guess we're never able to resolve the problem for Greg, right? So he can.
I don't think
Okay.
so.
Okay.
He's showing as a speaker currently.
Yeah. Okay. So he's showing as a speaker, but his.
Greg, can you talk or can you hear us? I mean.
Yeah, I think he is muted. That's the problem, and maybe there's a button he needs to push there that unmutes him. Then he should be able to contribute as well.
Yeah, we don't have we only have the option to mute everyone. Unfortunately, not to
Unmute
we
him,
can't
right?
manually unmute
So
him.
he needs to
Right?
unmute himself.
Yeah, and one thing he might be on a laptop, and I noticed I was originally going to start this on my laptop and I was having trouble figuring out how to start the space, so I just ended up pulling out my phone and doing it. So I don't know if maybe it's a little more tricky if you're doing this on a browser on your laptop versus like your phone or an iPad, some kind of mobile with an app.
Okay. Because I'm on my laptop right now, and That's one thing that had happened, is I'd also accidentally muted myself, but then I figured out how to unmute myself. So maybe Greg just needs to go through.
Oh yeah, he messaged that he's on his laptop and he can't see the unmute. I don't know if Albert, if since you're on a laptop also, if you can see where your mute button is for yourself.
Yeah,
Maybe we could let
it's to
Greg
the
know.
right, and where he sees all the individuals that are part of this chat. Under that, there's the mute button, and then it's if it's muted, then it's crossed in red, and you just need to push that, and then if it's no longer.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, look
Well,
at
Albert,
that. All
that was
right.
very good instructions.
Okay,
That's all
well,
it takes. Somebody with a little knowledge. Okay. Hi, everyone. Greg LaPointe here.
Hey, Greg. Since Kara and I have monopolized the conversation, we should probably let you talk about yourself and the Center for Natural Law.
Well, the Center for Natural Law, not surprisingly, advocates for the natural law. The natural law really is the rational justification, really the scientific evidence for libertarianism. It would prove why, as a political system, libertarianism is superior to any other more intrusive, more collectivist type of governance, including going up the line here. The Republican Party might be next in line, and certainly not the Democrat Party, as they are in favor of a central command, larger government, more intervening in our lives, our personal lives, our families, our communities. But libertarianism actually has a rational, philosophical, logical justification, and it's called the natural law. The natural law is really a science, and it establishes that freedom is our birthright, and that the primary associations in our life should be family and community, our jobs, a variety of local concerns and civic organizations certainly would be included in the primary associations of our lives. I think the Libertarian Party has done an excellent job, at least in many of their books and literature, in describing government as being its proper role is very skeletal, if I can put it that way, very rudimentary and basic. Yes, it's supposed to provide infrastructure, dams, perhaps highways, this kind of thing. Police departments, I think, are well justified, and other basic needs for the community. But after that, they have no business intruding into the goals and purposes we establish for ourselves, for our families and our communities. They should stay out of our business. And the Libertarian Party says that very directly, clearly, and is really a correct and proper political system for the Christian. Natural law is really something every Christian, every religion for that matter. It doesn't matter whether you're Hindu or Buddhist or a Taoist. Any religion really is required to embrace the natural law, because after all, God created the world, and that's where we get the natural law from the natural order. So natural law is a science, and it just establishes the appropriateness of libertarianism. I mean, it really is a science where you could really, I don't think it's an extreme at all or an exaggeration or hyperbolic at all to say that the libertarianism can actually be scientifically proven. And because it comes from God's natural, his created world and universe, the Christian really, I would go so far as to say, obliged to embrace the Libertarian Party. Anything above that is an intrusion in our natural rights within the community, within our families. So we promote the natural law, and I am delighted to be a part of the Pro-Life Libertarian Caucus. I'm just excited about that. And I'm also very excited to hear about other Christian groups embracing the libertarian way, because it is certainly God's way, as we can see in his creation.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So what does the Center for Natural Law do on a practical basis?
Well, for the last 12 years, we do seminar events. We've done well over 100 presentations for different civic groups, churches, mostly in the Rocky Mountain region. I just got back from Las Vegas about a month ago and gave a presentation to the Knights of Columbus of the city of Las Vegas. I've written one book, which I've allowed to go out of print because it just needed improvements. If you've ever written a book, you're never satisfied with it. And at some point, you just have to say, just publish it. But after you publish it, you think you could have done so much more. And that was the case there. But I have another book slated for this year. I have an online natural law mini course so folks can understand what the natural law is. I go into the prisons. That's just locally. I teach in the prisons. And of course, and a few other things. We have some YouTube, I don't know if you would call them tutorials, but brief explanations of the natural law. But I very much want to start to include, I should mention, I do want to include speaking about the Libertarian Party more and more, and especially the Pro-Life Party. But I would say just about every single one of my speeches, I do say that libertarianism really leans towards the Libertarian Party. And it doesn't matter who I'm speaking to, but I do say that routinely. Just a variety of local activities for the most part, speeches, seminar events, and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great.
Lori just posted in the thread on the space saying that Dr. Rectenwald said he'll be with us very shortly.
Okay, sounds great.
Well, I'm looking forward to asking Dr. I'm sorry, I want to pronounce his name correctly, Rectenwald?
Yes.
Okay. You know, coming from a Marxist background, that is very contrary to the libertarian way.
Right.
And he must have had some kind of an epiphany like St. Paul getting struck by lightning on his horse, you know, where he goes from persecuting the Jews to being their number one man, their number one spokesman. What happened that he would go from Marxism, atheistic materialism, to libertarianism?
Right. Yeah. From persecuting the Christians to becoming one. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm delighted to hear more about the Christian caucus. Is that Karis? I'm sorry. No, that's, I'm sorry. Jessica, is it?
Yes, it's Kara's.
I know, like, I'm like the original founder, and Jessica is one of the co-founders.
Okay. How long have you been around?
Well, I mean, do you want to know when I was born, or you want to know when the caucus started?
What is that when the caucus started? When you were born?
No. Well, how long have we been around as a caucus?
Yes.
You know, we started out kind of slow, and I would say I started putting feelers out there for people like around late April last year. And then we kind of like started the Discord, slowly started working on getting Twitter started and stuff like that, and everything was very slow going, and we're kind of starting to get the ball rolling. Doing this presidential interview series with Pro-Life Caucus is great, because this is one of the first projects to get our start getting our ball rolling on doing projects, and then that along with the defund Planned Parenthood push that we're doing. So yeah, it looks like we have Dr. Rectenwald. We're so glad that you could join us, even though you are apparently amid some travel chaos. Not surprising with all the bad weather. So I'm going to send you an invite to speak, and hopefully you just got that. And yeah, thanks for joining us. Hello.
Hi there. How are you? How's everybody doing?
We're doing great. We're just having some philosophical conversations, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Yes, I apologize for my lateness. Things got crazy in the air, and there was a delay. So I'm in an airport and tried to find a quiet place. I think I did. So here we are.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, because I'm sure it's not easy doing this amid all of those other things. So we really do appreciate you finding the time amidst that to come and talk with us.
My pleasure.
We've spent some time introducing our three groups that we're planning to interview today. I'm Kara from the Christian Caucus of the Libertarian Party. And then we have Albert from the Pro-Life Libertarian Caucus and Dr. Greg Lapointe from the Center for Natural Law. So if I think, Albert, should we just go ahead and let him introduce himself and his story a little
Yeah,
bit?
I think that's great.
Okay, yeah. So Dr. Rectenwald, if you'd like to go ahead and jump in if you're ready and tell us about yourself and why you're running and stuff like that, we're ready to hear from you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I hope you hear me well. So yes, I am a Christian, and I basically had a conversion to Christianity in 2018. It was on a day that my son was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and I effectively turned towards the heavens and I asked, "What is happening? What are you doing to me?" Basically, praying for the first time in many, many years. And I got an answer, and I got an answer that my son would be all right no matter what, and that included death. And that told me in an instant that that God was real, that eternity existed, and that this wasn't the only world. You see, up until this point, I had been an avowed Marxist and uh, actually a scholar of secularism, and I wrote a lot of papers and books on secularism. I actually had become one of the world's most prominent scholars in this field, especially historical secularism. So I had, it was quite a revelation to me, and everything changed. My whole world view, it changed in an instant. I had a massive gestalt shifter. I'd like to call it more like my Damascus moment. There weren't other things that had been going crazy at the time. I was also being harassed and harangued and attacked by the woke mob at NYU, where I was a professor, and had just lost a long-term uh, partner, as we called it then, and for her conversion to third wave feminism, and siding with the woke mob against me. So there was that was then when my son got diagnosed with cancer, it was like strike three. I was like, I'm done, and I surrendered at that time. I surrendered to the Creator, and that has informed my entire worldview, and that's where I'm coming from now. I should say, when I was a younger man, I was a seminarian in a Catholic seminary. I went away to school at age 14. And this was not just some sort of boarding school. You don't have weekends home. It was 6 to 8 weeks straight without seeing anybody from your family, and members of the opposite sex, and all kinds of stuff like that. And I left there in a rage because I didn't like what was happening there. There was a lot of hypocrisy as I saw it, a lot of things happening, which I won't mention, that really upset me. Here I was giving up all kind of contact with the opposite sex, and there were people there that were having plenty of contact with the same sex. So let's put it that way. And that angered me to no end. I left and I rejected everything. I turned into like a existentialist, as it were. Of course, this is now like 16, 17 years old, so it's very immature. You know, I started reading Sartre and Camus, and the whole existentialist cadre, including Nietzsche and so forth. And it took me, so that was like age 16. So we're talking about a 40-year hiatus during which time I explored all kinds of materialist philosophy, especially landing in Marxism, which is, of course, a materialist philosophy. That is to say, there's no belief in anything beyond the material realm. Everything is a product of matter, and likewise, there's no extra material or supernatural. This is despite some people claiming that there is a compatibility between them. I don't think so, because it's very clear that Marxism is materialist. So, as a scholar of secularism, I was studying the history of atheism, and especially in the 19th century in Great Britain. And I traced these radical atheists and their careers, and wrote about their relationship to science and things like that. Published a lot in those areas, and it changed dramatically then when I had this this Damascus moment, for lack of a better phrase, and it's been a faith journey since. And this candidacy, like, I don't pitch this candidacy in terms of Christianity, because there are a lot of people that in the Libertarian Party, as you all are pretty familiar, that aren't that are avowed atheists, some Randians and things like that. And so, but when asked the truth, I'll tell the truth. When asked for the truth about my convictions, I will tell them. And I happen to be pro-life as well. I'm not happen to be, I should say, necessarily am pro-life because of my convictions. And likewise, I think that every human being, regardless of their size or stage of development, has a right to life, and that abortion represents an NAP violation as well. And so likewise, I do, but I don't, that's not like a policy prescription, because I don't want the state arbitrating this. I want the human heart, to be arbitrating this in the end. I want that to be the place of decision. Like Ron Paul said, it shouldn't be illegal, it should be unthinkable. So that's, I think, is a campaign issue that I think is about a cultural, moral shift that we need to do in the culture to really persuade people about the truth of this matter. And that's pretty much, in a nutshell, in terms of how the campaign relates to believers. I certainly welcome believers in my campaign. We have believers on the staff, and I think, frankly, a lot of things are explicable, if not everything, in terms of freedom. And I think freedom is really only authorized by God. That's how we get it. Otherwise, we'd be deterministic like every other species. We wouldn't have the ability to undertake what Mises called human action, that is voluntaristic action on our own accord, that isn't determined by material circumstances or conditions. So I think human freedom is utterly compatible. I should say Christianity is utterly compatible with libertarianism, and vice versa.
Thank you. Albert, did you have any follow-up right away for pro-life, or
Yeah, since that was brought up, why don't we delve into that issue? So, Dr. Rectenwald, you characterize your position on abortion as very important to you, the pro-life position. But as of right now, I was looking at different websites of the Libertarian Party candidates, and the only one I'm aware of that mentions that issue from a pro-life perspective is that of Jacob Hornberger. Are you willing to put on your website that you are pro-life and the reasons why you're pro-life?
Yeah. I mean, we didn't want to make this a campaign prong right away, because there's a lot of issues around that, and people are going to have different views. And of course, I'm principled in my views. But yeah, we have no problem saying that I'm pro-life, but I also want to make a caveat there that I don't think the state should be determining what people do. I don't
Okay.
want the centralized government involved. It has to come down to the individual and the family.
Okay, if you don't mind,
Frankly,
I'd like to kind of delve a little deeper into that and ask your opinion on the Supreme Court had, which was Dobson versus Jackson's Women's Health, overturning Roe versus Wade. What was your opinion of that decision?
I think that was a good decision. It's good that it's getting sent back to the states because you're going to have a more pluralistic response to this. It will allows the states to have their own laws, and I think the further it goes down to the local level, the better.
Right. And I know
So,
that, yeah,
yeah.
there's some other libertarians, I believe, who are in favor of codifying Roe versus Wade at the federal level. So I would assume, based on that answer, you'd be against that, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
I don't think we should instantiate at the federal level a policy of murder.
right. But that doesn't that imply, though, that if you don't want to codify Roe versus Wade at the federal level, then the states should be free to decide that issue. And if the state wants to regulate or treat abortion as an unjustified killing, that it should be allowed to, correct?
Yes. Hold on a second. Yes. I'm sorry. Somebody's just texting me something, and it's kind of important. It has to do with a family member. Excuse me. My sister happens to be in life support right now. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Could you mind repeating that?
Yeah, I was just talking about, since you're against federal codification, obviously the states would be free to impose restrictions on abortion.
Yes.
But if you're at the state level, would you favor restrictions on, for example, doctors performing abortions?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So it's only at the federal level that you're saying the government should not be
Yeah, I
involved.
just don't want the federal central government dictating the terms, and that would allow a plurality of opinion. And I'm not saying I want people to adopt the opinion that abortion should be unrestricted, but I think the more plurality there is, the more options people have to move to places to be in states that are restrictive, that are pro-life, and communities like that. And we'll end up with more of them as time goes on, without question. Then this travesty will finally come to an end.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's very helpful to hear that, because I think people tend to confuse federal and state. And when people say, well, I'm against abortion, they want the federal government to basically run roughshod over the states, when really it's the local communities and the states, and based upon the local mores, that really need to decide this issue.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Everything about my campaign is about localism and decentralization. So the more, Liechtensteins that we have, the more possible states, so the more plurality we have, and then we're going to get more states, and we're going to see where values really lie. And I think we're going to see that they actually lie with pro-life, and that's because I think that a lot of the state policies have been dictated to the U.S. basically through the UN, frankly, and their population control so-called ethics, and these other globalist organizations that have had on their agenda the reduction in population, a neo-Malthusianism that they have been perpetrating, and that has been adopted effectively by various states, and all these NGOs that are promoting it, as well as, of course, Planned Parenthood is being funded by the federal government to conduct abortions. All that I would stop immediately. No funding for this. No funding at all. And that would really turn the tide right there.
Okay, that's great. I guess getting into party politics, should the National Libertarian Party take a position on this issue? And how about state libertarian parties? How do you feel about that?
I think state libertarian parties could take a position. I don't think the national party should take a position. I think we need to have a cultural education within the party, and we need to try to move the party towards this. But I don't think the LP national should take a position on this. I think it should stay neutral, not one way or the other, and certainly not a pro-choice so-called this platform prong.
Okay. Kara, on an administrative note, I just got a message from Russell Brooksbank saying that there seems to be some people who are blocked from listening to the interview. I don't know, how if that's the case or what, but do you know anything about that?
No, nobody should be blocked. I don't know if there's something where if someone hosting like has an account blocked, they couldn't join possibly, but our account has no one blocked. So
Huh.
I I don't I don't know if they want to just try again. Sorry, I'm not sure. They should be able to get on.
Okay.
I have some people blocked, but I think that the spaces allows them to communicate with me through this venue. I haven't seen any
Mhm.
problems with that in the past. In fact, all too
Yeah.
often they have been involved.
Okay. Well, those are pretty much my questions. So I'd like to turn it over to you, Kara or Greg. So go ahead and.
Yeah, I'll jump in and ask a question. Well, first I just wanted to say I really appreciate you sharing your personal testimony because it's a powerful testimony. I mean, there's just something about when a person is so broken down, and there's God is close to the brokenhearted. I mean, it's in the Beatitudes, and it's so true. And I just think anytime we share our testimony, it plants seeds for other people. So thank you so much for sharing that
Sure.
because it was definitely really personal.
Yeah, let me just
So,
add one more thing. In academia and in intellectual circles, it's not very fashionable at all to be a Christian, and it's not fashionable to have any belief. And it's considered sophisticated to actually eschew it, to laugh at it, scoff at it. So I had plenty of that after this happened from my colleagues as well. It wasn't fun. Let's put it that way.
right. Well, yeah, I'm aware of that sentiment, and it's really unfortunate because they do have a lot of position of influence, and especially people that are going to college and trying to learn. And I appreciate your stance and being bold in that. One question I have is, you are a Christian and that's influencing your campaign. So with that in mind, what are your major campaign issues that you are coming out? What are you leading with? I know you mentioned like pro-life wasn't one of the things you're really like leading with,
No.
or at least at this time. So I'm wondering what you are leading
Well,
with.
I'm leading with decentralization, localization, nullification of unconstitutional laws and mandates at the state and local level. My campaign's more than a campaign for me to become president or nominee for president. It's a campaign to increase liberty across the country, to increase liberty at the individual level. And so the way to do that is through decentralization, localization, a nullification. And basically, this is the premise under which the nation was founded. So I'm very much a Jeffersonian in my outlook, as opposed to like the Federalists and like Hamilton and all that. I think this is the way that we're going to wrest power and decrease the power of the central government over us. the more possibilities there are, the more communities that have local power, the greater the freedom. The closer the state is, like the more local the state is, the greater the liberty of the individual. So that's the premise and the main thrust. Now, of course, the campaign is also focused on just making more libertarians in the world and creating a bigger party. And on that score, I would like to say that, while I've been a lowercase libertarian for some time, I've only recently become an uppercase libertarian, and people hold that against me, but I think that's actually a strong point. So is my previous Marxist past, because it makes me able to see where these people are coming from. And also, I know their way of thinking inside out. And so I'm able to dismantle those views, to dismantle their premises, which are false, and to spread the word of liberty through kind of an intimate knowledge with the opposition. And so, the other thing that the campaign is premised on is that I have a reach well outside of the Libertarian Party. I've had a platform that existed prior to this, and I've reached out of the Libertarian Party in many media circuits, and I've been spreading the message of liberty for 8 years and in 5 books, and speaking at liberty-minded institutions all across the country, including the Mises Institute, but plenty of others as well. And I should add also that I am pro-life across the board, and that is to say, I don't believe in war, and I think war violates the NAP for necessarily. And I've been vocally critical of the recent onslaught or the ongoing onslaught in Gaza, and for that I was canceled by the right. Now, part of it, a good part of it, the neocon right. My publisher canceled me. My Hillsdale fellowship was rescinded, and so forth. So, I've been canceled by left and right. So, I consider it a badge of honor.
For sure. I have one more question before I let Greg jump in from Center of Natural Law. Now, I feel like you're probably more along the lines of promoting voluntarism and communities stepping in to fill in where the state has been kind of taking over and sticking its tendrils.
Yeah.
So do you have any plans or ideas of how to empower communities and churches and families again?
Well, yes. I mean, we need to have people run, libertarian-minded people running for office at the local level and having their input at the local level. We need to, and this doesn't only include uppercase libertarians. It could include libertarians, lowercase libertarians, who are, haven't found the Libertarian Party as such. As long as they have a libertarian-minded way of thinking, we need to get those people in offices, and we need to take over these places so that we can resist the federal government's constant incursions and its interloping and oppressive nature. They can't drive the agenda through into the social fabric without getting into these local communities. And the more localism we have, the more difficult it is for the agenda for them to get handles on all the localities and to drive their agenda through. And that agenda is, I believe, a globalist agenda, frankly. It isn't just a centralized statist agenda. It's a globalist agenda, which is a ultimate statism, an ultimate central statism that I think is being imposed gradually through various means, which I have written about at length in some of my books, but especially the last one, The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty. So I think localism is the main answer, and So this is a campaign that's also a movement. And, I've been endorsed by the Mises Caucus and many members thereof, and including Dave Smith and many members of the broader libertarian movement who aren't necessarily party people, but nevertheless very libertarian-minded and scholars in libertarianism. Walter Block and others. Now, Walter Block doesn't agree with me on everything, especially life, the pro-life position. He also doesn't agree with my stance about Israel's war, but nevertheless, he makes clear that libertarianism is not a cult. There are diverse views within it, and I think that needs to be recognized, and that it doesn't mean somebody's not really a libertarian if they don't hold every view that you hold. So uh,
So,
that
Thank you for
yeah,
that.
can
Oh,
I follow up on since
yeah, can I just say one thing
sure.
real quick? Because I see a couple people maybe requesting to speak. So they may not have been here earlier when I mentioned what we'd like for people to do if they do have a question, because we're not going to be probably pulling up other speakers, is go ahead and put it as a comment in the thread. And Jessica's going to be kind of watching those comments. And we might have a chance at the end to get to some of the questions that people submit there. So I just wanted to say that real quick for the people submitting requests. But go ahead, Albert.
Yeah,
Sorry.
since you brought it up twice, I was wondering about in more detail your position on the war in Israel against Hamas,
Mhm.
because I heard Representative Thomas Massey speak on this issue, and I actually agree with Thomas Massey's position, which is that we should not be funding the war.
Right.
But Thomas Massey made the point that he supports Israel's right to defend itself, and that obviously they were attacked by Hamas, who did atrocious things to Israeli civilians. So I guess my position would be that we should not be providing any kind of military or foreign aid to any country, and that includes Israel. And so we should definitely not be bankrolling their military to engage in this war. But personally, I believe in Israel's right to defend itself. Is that your position, or do you have a different position?
My position, and I've said this a lot, is that we should rescind and end all funding, military aid, arms, and this is not only to Israel, but all countries that we're funding and arming at present, including Ukraine, as well as Taiwan. They have that rolled into a package they're trying to get through. I think 106 billion in total. Some of it to Israel. I think 14.4 billion, in addition to the 3.4 billion that we give them every year, in addition to the arms that we're shipping over there on an almost daily basis, in addition to the cachet that we have in Israel that we're giving them unfettered access to all of this American property. We should absolutely stop funding them entirely, and not in 6 years, not when they, as Vivek Ramaswamy said, when they tell us they don't want it anymore. Now, immediately. And Israel has the right to defend itself, but what it's doing now is not self-defense. I said from the beginning, what they should have done is they have very sophisticated intelligence apparatuses. They have like 3 or 4 major intelligence wings. They have special forces. They should have hunted down, found, and brought to justice the Hamas fighters and others that were also associated and brought them to justice. But not what's happening in Gaza. This is an absolute slaughter. There's at least 23,000 civilians been killed, another 7,000 buried under rubble, 1.9 million people displaced, no water, electricity, food. They've cut this off except for very trickling aid, which they've also tried to cut off in sporadic motions. So it's been a slaughter. It has nothing to do with what Gaza did, what Hamas did. This was planned in advance of Hamas's attack. Netanyahu showed a map and showed what he wanted Greater Israel to be, and it included Gaza. So I think this is a predetermined objective of Israel's, and it has to be stopped. At least from our standpoint, we have no business aiding and abetting them and undertaking this. By the way, 10,000 of these people that were killed were children. There's also about 9,000 amputees, some of them amputated without anesthetic. I mean, this is just a slaughter. It's a ethnic cleansing at best, and genocide at worst.
Okay, well, thanks for your response. Anyone else have any follow-up questions?
Greg, I don't think you've had a chance to ask any questions for Center of Natural Law. If you wanted to come in and ask anything right now.
I do. I have 4 questions, but I have just a quick, just a curiosity question. Do you think libertarians may be in good standing as libertarians and take a slightly different point of view about the war in Israel?
Absolutely.
Or is it?
Sure.
Okay.
As I said,
Okay.
as I said, Walter Block, who's endorsed my campaign, he's written books, a book about Israel and the case for Israel and its treatment of the Palestinian people, and he's a friend of mine. I mean, and he's endorsed the campaign. So if people have a different view, that's perfectly acceptable. I
understand. You were giving your position.
Yes.
Okay, very good. I have 4 1 philosophical question and 3 practical questions. So but I could not help after hearing your introduction, which was fabulous, by the way. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I think you and I could have a long conversation. We won't talk philosophy right now, but I want to ask you a philosophical question.
Yeah.
True enough. Materialism mischaracterizes the human person. No question about it. You sounded a little bit Hegelian with some of your comments. German idealism, in my view, likewise mischaracterizes human nature. Process philosophy is limited. It's myopic. The philosophy that really supports, or I should say the foundation that really is at the basis of libertarianism is metaphysical realism. And I'm sure at this point in time, you probably have embraced metaphysical realism. I don't know. But here's my question to you. Natural law is based in metaphysical realism, the embrace of the invisible and visible, and that's why it's compatible with religious belief. But do you see libertarianism in any way as being a compatible political system with the way human beings are in their natural state? Do you see that maybe natural law or metaphysical realism or something else? I'm looking for, do you see any kind of a natural outgrowth, or do you see libertarianism as being the most direct, natural way to govern human beings? For government to be, do you see anything natural about libertarianism?
Yes, I think that the libertarian position is that there is a self-ownership. First of all, one has ownership over oneself, and one is able to do action, human action. Human action is not action that's determined by the material world, as in Marxism, where everything is deterministic and there's no real will. They don't really buy into free will, although there's all kinds of contradictions within that scheme, where they, on the one hand, say, that it's inevitable that the material conditions will end in a certain way, and on the other hand, they cajole and harangue and admonish the working class to undertake something on a voluntaristic basis. So there's all kind of contradictions there. I am certainly a metaphysical realist. That is, I think there is no question that the human life entails more than strict material reality. And this is, I think, very can be demonstrated with reference to the fact of the mind exists, and there is no way to find it within the material elements that supposedly generated according to the materialist outlook. It seems to have some independence, and this is also is what accords us the possibility of human action as defined by Mises. That is voluntary action that we take on our own behalf, on our own will, with our own wills behind it. So libertarianism is the only political philosophy that accords with the true state of the human being as such, the natural state, if you wish. I think it's endowed, but you don't have to. You don't have to, and I don't think I'm actually requiring anybody to say I think it's endowed. But it's from the methodological standpoint. It doesn't matter whether it's endowed as long as we agree that human beings have freedom and we have free will, and that we're not determined by our circumstances, by economic or other material conditions, that there's something different about us, and that we are different from other species on this basis, and other things, of course. I don't see any computer programming going on with mice, or maybe they do have some kind of programming, but it's not as elaborate. They don't have programs that make things happen. They may have programs that they follow, but ours is different. We make things happen. And that's why I think, in fact, libertarianism is the only political philosophy that is in accordance with the human nature per se.
Bravo. I agree with you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Second question.
Yep.
Vivek Ramaswamy has made the case, and I think persuasively, that there are only three branches of government. And the fourth branch is the administrative state. It's become behemoth, and they are making so many regulations of all kinds that they really seem to be the dominant force in our lives. When you were elected president of the United States, would you consider signing executive orders that would entail mass firings of the various federal agencies?
Absolutely. I would demolish them. Afuera, as Javier Milei puts it, afuera, out. FBI, CIA, IRS, CDC, DOE. I could go on. DHS, you name it. I would axe them. Take a wrecking ball to them. Actually, it's my metaphor for this. Wreck the regime is my campaign slogan. Absolutely, I think that it's a behemoth, and it is oppressive. It has nothing to do with anything we vested in this state. We've never agreed to it, and it is unconstitutional largely. It's got a life of its own, has its own momentum, has its own inertia, and must be dismantled. It's going to take active measures to get rid of it.
Okay. Two quick questions, and I can even give them to you together. The first question is, have you given any thought to who your vice president will be? And lastly, what book would you recommend to a newcomer to the Libertarian Party that best encapsulates the libertarian beliefs?
Okay. Yes, I have given some thought to running mate, and we're going to be making an announcement, a big announcement very soon. I will say this: it is a very prominent libertarian, and a very, very, very articulate and principled libertarian, and it will make serious waves in the race. I can guarantee you that, but I can't reveal who it is yet. But yes, we have given plenty of thought to that. On which books I would start with, I can sort of tell you my path. I went through Mises first, and then into Rothbard and so forth. I would say Rothbard's book. Exact title is escaping me. Liberty. Let me give me 1 second here. Sorry, I had so many titles that I read.
How about The Libertarian Mind by David Boaz?
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, okay.
For a New Liberty, the Libertarian Manifesto is the book I had in mind.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Doctor.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
No,
That's all for me at the moment.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Greg. And then if I think real quick, Jessica might have one or two questions that she has picked up from listeners that she might want to present now.
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions from the chat. One of them is relating to the abortion issue. And the question asks, does harming an individual not violate the non-aggression principle similar to murder? And then after that, I'll ask the other one.
Yes, I think I said that. It's in violation of the NAP. I think it violates the rights of the person to live and their property and themselves. It's an aggression against the person. Absolutely. Was there?
I think I'll clarify maybe what my guess is that they're getting at is, would you hold the same position for something like murder to be not made illegal in the same way
Oh,
abortion,
I
where it
see.
would be just down to yes.
I think no, I wouldn't do that. I think that look. We're dealing with a cultural perception and history, and we're dealing with a lot of discordant views on this, and a lot of understanding that has to be made clear. And that is that whatever stage or size a person is, they have a right to be alive, and they have a right to their property and themselves, and to kill them is a violation of that. But it still doesn't have the valence that murder does to the citizen. And likewise, I wouldn't equate them at this juncture by saying, like, I would hold somebody that committed this as a murderer until we have more agreement that's the case. And so we need a campaign, a cultural campaign, a moral campaign, a crusade, really, to bring this through. And until that point, I don't think you can start putting people in jail for doing it. I don't think so.
But I think to clarify, because we addressed this issue earlier, you do believe that the states where you do have a majority of people who are against abortion can implement these laws.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Awesome clarification there. I do have another question from the comments. What are you going to do about illegal immigration and the large amount of international conflict?
Well, I spoke to the international conflict issue. The problem is that we have been entangled in all these issues, all these countries around the world, creating enmity and enemies everywhere that we have intervened. All of this has to stop. I would bring all of our troops home from 900 plus bases back to the American shores. I would stop all aid and arms, military and otherwise, to all foreign nations. Stop sending arms and military aid first, altogether. And then, what was the other question? It was about, sorry.
Yeah, the rest of the question, or the beginning of that question, was relating to immigration.
Okay, well, I have a very clear immigration position, and that is, I believe that in a private property society, which to my way of thinking is ideal, where we didn't have so-called public property, then the only borders that would exist would be the borders around property. And the only people that could enter said property would be somebody who was either invited implicitly or explicitly onto that property. And so we don't live in that world. We live in a world where the state claims to have control and ownership over so-called public property. But I don't believe the state is the rightful holder of that property. It's been stolen from us through taxation, and which is theft. So my position is this. Since there are some people that want open borders and to have anybody come into the country that wants to, and there are others that say no, the only right thing to do is to make immigration an invitation basis process that invited people by some individuals or individual company or whatever would be allowed to come into the country through invitation, and that person or group or company who invited them would have to have some sort of liability insurance on them for financial issues, etc. And likewise, we'd have this could actually be very liberal in the end, and it's certainly more humanitarian than having people come in and sleep on the streets, or obversely, having them put in hotels at the taxpayers' expense. This is just ridiculous. It's a humanitarian crisis as it stands right now. I don't cede the humanitarian or moral or ethical high ground to the open borders people. I think that there's a strong case to be made that it's actually a humanitarian disaster at this point. And likewise, we need a different system, not open borders, not draconian, you can't come in here, invitation-based immigration. This would protect public property, which is really owned by the citizen, by the taxpayers, right? This would protect their rights over property. This would also allow people to come into the country, and if you wanted people to come in, you're more than welcome to invite them.
I have a question if you're done with that one, also from the Christian Caucus, that we haven't touched on this subject quite yet. So there is some differing views within the party regarding gender transition of minors. I know some people think that parents, it's the parents' decision and the children's decision, and other people have views that the child cannot consent. So I'm just wondering if you could make known your stance on that issue.
Sure. I think that any person 18 or older has the perfect right in having property over themselves and having attained to the age of consent to do what they want in terms of that. I don't think any minor can really give consent, and that I think it's an NAP violation to undertake these operations, or even inclusive of gender affirming care and so-called, including puberty blockers and transition hormones. I think that is not consent because that person hasn't reached the age of consent. I don't care if their parents, their doctors, and a whole host of other people say it's fine. I still think it's a violation of that minor's rights.
Thank you so much for that answer. Albert, do you have anything else right now?
No, I don't.
Okay, and what about you, Greg?
Well, I have a last question. It's more of maybe a personal dimension. Doctor, do you have any hobbies, or if you were to take a whole week off, is there a particular vacation spot you would go to? Just can you give us a sense of, are you a hunter? Do you go skydiving, or do you have any hobbies that you do?
Sure. I'm a tennis player, first of all. I play tennis regularly with my son, who whips me every time. He's 35. I'm 64, but I taught him how to play, and I sometimes regret that I taught him pretty well. But I also like my ideal vacation, for example, is a beach vacation in which I'm reading on the beach. That's just me. I mean, some people like to hunt. I like to read. I like to hunt words. I like to hunt ideas. And
sounds good.
Yep.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you giving us your time, Dr. Rectenwald, because, we just, got a chance to ask questions from the perspective of our couple of groups here that may not have been focuses of other interviews. So people that are associated with us have a chance now to kind of hear those things directly from you and what your positions are on those subjects. So thank you so much for taking the time, answering questions, sharing about your path, both with your faith and with your political philosophy. I just wanted to say thank you. And yeah, Albert, do you have any closing?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that. Thank you very much for participating. And I think your answers were very illuminating. And, I'd heard you before on some other programs like the Tom Wood Show, but I think we were able to go into much more detail about certain issues here. And I'm really thankful for that. So, I intend to be at the Florida Libertarian Convention next weekend. So if you are there,
Oh, great.
maybe I'll get a chance to introduce myself.
Please do so. Please introduce yourself. I'd like to say hello and talk a little bit.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Sounds great.
Very much. And thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Sorry for the delay, and thanks for everybody for hanging in there. I'm sure I heard you had some very good intellectual, philosophical discussion in my absence, and I applaud you for that.
Yeah, we were getting down into some stuff while we were waiting. So yeah, we didn't mind waiting. We had some good conversation and appreciate you making the time, even though you're going through the travel chaos right now. So
Thank you.
yeah, with that, if unless anybody has anything else, I think we can close out.
Great,
good.
because my
Thank you.
my earpods are running out of juice.
All right, I'm going to close out the space and thank you everybody who joined, and thank you, Dr. Rectenwald, for joining us
Oh,
again.
thank you for
Yes.
having
All
me.
right.
Take care.
All right, take
Bye bye.
care. Bye.